Zach raised his beer, grinning like he owned the world. "To Michelle, our family's paper pilot." Laughter erupted. Every face around the table turned toward me, amused, proud of the joke. They didn't know the smell of smoke that never leaves your hair after a mission. They didn't know the sound of men screaming for air when a helicopter goes down. And they sure as hell didn't know who Revenant One was. I smiled anyway, because silence was safer than truth. But that night, as their laughter echoed across the backyard, I promised myself one thing. The next time they mocked me, I wouldn't stay silent. My name is Michelle Butler, and that was the last summer I let anyone mistake quiet for weakness. The laughter rolled across the backyard, warm and familiar, the kind that usually meant comfort. But that night, every chuckle felt like a nail driven deeper. Zach was in the middle of his story again, something about real military discipline and mental toughness. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. No one looked my way, not even out of politeness. They didn't have to. Everyone already knew their version of me. I sat there, my hands still wrapped around a beer can so cold it burned. The metal bent under my grip, but no one noticed. Maybe they'd forgotten I was there. Maybe that was easier. The Butler family tradition, loud voices, louder pride, left no room for quiet ones like me. And silence had always been safer than truth. When Zach raised his drink toward his father, Captain Roland Butler, pride lit up the older man's face. I watched them, father and son, so perfectly mirrored in confidence and noise. For a moment, I wondered if there was ever space in this family for someone who didn't need applause to prove her worth. The smell of salt reached me before I even realized I'd walked toward the beach. The laughter faded behind me, replaced by the crash of waves against the sand. I stood there barefoot, the water biting at my ankles, and made a quiet promise beneath my breath. Someday, the silence that kept me invisible would break. Not with anger, with truth. I grew up by the coast where people believed 3 things kept a family together: stay quiet, work hard, and never cross the line. I had already broken all 3 before I turned 25. In our town, my Uncle Roland's name meant strength, medals, and stories that men told after too many beers. He was the legend. Zach, his son, was the heir to that legacy. And me, the girl who flew planes, was the polite afterthought, the side note in their conversations. They loved to talk about heroes, but never to the one sitting at the same table. I let them. Words were dangerous when the truth you carried was stamped classified. Still, some nights, the memories crept in like tidewater, the cockpit flooding with red light, the radio crackling with panic. "We're pinned down. Revenant One. Do you copy?" And my own voice answering steady and low. "Copy. I'm not leaving you behind." Weeks later, back at the base, my commanding officer spoke quietly, almost reluctantly. "Captain Roland Butler owes you his men's lives. He knows it was you." I froze. So that was the truth hiding in plain sight. The man who raised Zach's pride on a pedestal had once been under my wing, literally. He knew. He'd chosen silence, for his son, for his name, maybe to keep the family myth alive, but the cost was mine. That night, sitting with my father in the fading light, he said, almost to himself, "Some people get applause. Others get the sound of engines." I understood. It was his way of telling me he saw me, even if no one else did. But the quiet didn't comfort me anymore. It pressed down, heavy as salt in an open wound. If Roland wanted silence, then I'd choose the opposite. I'd choose the light. The moon was already high when I walked down to the beach, my feet sinking into cold sand. I wasn't surprised to see Roland there, a beer can in his hand, eyes on the horizon where the sea swallowed the sky. He didn't turn when he spoke. "Thank you, Michelle. I know you were Revenant One." The words hit like a flare in the dark, bright, quick, gone. I said quietly, "I just did my job." "But you could have said something. Just once." He sighed. "I didn't want Zach to feel small. Then you made me smaller instead. He didn't argue, just nodded, staring at the water. You're right. My team still owes you one. But in the service, we don't say thank you out loud. We just remember. I studied his profile in the moonlight. This man who had built his life on silence and command. He wasn't cruel. He was trapped in the logic of men his age, where words were weakness and acknowledgement meant imbalance. But that order they protected so fiercely was choking the rest of us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Keep your silence if it keeps you comfortable, I said. But the next time someone laughs at me, I won't stay quiet. Roland finally looked at me then, his expression softening. Good, he said. You've earned the right. The tide pushed closer, foam lapping at our feet, the moon glinting across the waves. In that silver light, the unspoken became clear. The line between love and pride, loyalty and fear. I turned back toward the house, the laughter faint in the distance, and knew this would be the last summer my silence protected anyone but me. I wouldn't be silent again. 2 years later, I came home different. The confidence I'd earned in the air didn't seem to fit inside my family's backyard. The smell of smoke, the same country songs, the same voices. Nothing had changed except me. Zach stood by the grill, already performing. He raised his beer toward the crowd. Welcome home, Captain Butler. Heard the Navy's keeping you busy with meetings and memos. The laughter hit like static. I smiled and answered, calm but sharp. Depends on the altitude. The noise thinned to silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. Roland looked up from his chair, pride and warning crossing his face at once. I sat there, watching the same patterns unfold. Everyone bragged about Zach's gym, his training programs, his supposed discipline. No one asked about me. I was still the polite relative who didn't interrupt. A new voice broke in. Sergeant Mason Hale, one of Roland's old SEAL buddies. He slapped Roland's shoulder and laughed. Remember that pilot who saved your team off Mogadishu? Cap? What was her call sign again? The air froze. Roland hesitated, forcing a grin. Revenant One. Hell of a pilot. My pulse stuttered. He'd said it like a confession. No one noticed but me. I looked at him. He looked away. His silence, for once, wasn't arrogance. It was guilt. Zach laughed again, still oblivious. At least that pilot's got guts. Some folks only fly simulators. I set my drink down. Some of us fly where there are no do-overs. The words hung there, sharp and final. I stood before anyone could respond and walked toward the beach. Roland's gaze followed, heavy as the tide. The storm wasn't in the sky. It was at that table, waiting. That summer's night carried a different kind of heat. Fireworks burst over the water, while Zach bragged to a cheering crowd, showing off his tough-like-a-SEAL routine. The sound of it grated against my chest. Inside, my mother stirred lemonade and smiled faintly. Roland's son is doing so well. You flying those planes is nice too, honey, just so dangerous. I smiled, the kind that cracked before it reached my eyes. Outside, Zach spotted me. Hey, Michelle, maybe next year you'll join us for real military training. The laughter erupted again. Even Roland stayed quiet. Then Evan, Zach's little boy, spoke up. Dad, isn't Aunt Michelle in the military too? The laughter cut off. Zach forced a chuckle. Well, not that kind of military. I crouched to Evan's height. Maybe one day you'll understand what kind really means. He nodded, wide-eyed. That innocence hit me harder than any insult could. Later, I found Roland alone at the kitchen table, his hand trembling around a half-empty beer. You know this isn't harmless, right? I said. He nodded. I just don't want to turn this house into a battlefield. Your silence already did. It made Zach believe he's untouchable. He studied me, the weight of years behind his eyes. Then he said quietly, maybe it's time someone else fired the first shot. Outside, another round of fireworks cracked the sky, their smoke curling against the glass. In the reflection, I saw myself, not small, not quiet, just steady, ready. The next time they came for me with laughter, I wouldn't shrink back. The next time, I'd let the truth detonate. 3 years after that summer, I came home again. The Florida air was thick with heat and salt, the smell of barbecue mingling with ocean wind. Captain Roland Butler's 60th birthday had turned into an event. Old SEAL brothers, neighbors, family, all gathered like it was a reunion of legends. Zach was in the middle of it, loud and shining, retelling training stories as if they were war tales. His friends laughed too easily, too loud. When he saw me, he raised his beer with that familiar grin. Michelle's back. "Hey, Commander, still flying the desk, huh?" Laughter rippled through the yard. I set my glass down slowly, met his eyes. "Still flying, Zach. Just not as low as you think." The laughter died fast. Roland looked up, jaw tightening, eyes narrowing with something that felt like both warning and respect. Zach tried to laugh it off. "Relax. I'm kidding. You know I love you, right? You love the sound of yourself," I said softly. A drunk SEAL cut in. "You military too? Sweetheart, what's your call sign?" Zach smirked. "Oh yeah, let's hear it. Maybe paper wings?" I scanned their faces, every one of them waiting for me to play along. I took a breath. Revenant One. The laughter vanished. A veteran's voice broke the silence. "Wait, you were the pilot in Mogadishu." Roland stood, shoulders squaring as command filled his tone again. "Zach, apologize. Now." Zach blinked, nervous. "Dad, it's just a joke. Apologize. For what?" Roland's voice cut through the crowd. "For mocking the pilot who saved my men." The color drained from Zach's face. "You mean her? She flew through fire so we could come home," Roland said. "And you laughed at her. You didn't ask," he added. When Zach whispered, "I didn't know," I stood still in the quiet that followed. The air hummed with truth. Zach finally said, "I'm sorry, it's fine," I said, though both of us knew it wasn't. Roland's eyes met mine, heavy with shame and pride. He reached into his pocket, placed a brass coin in my palm. "To the one who flew through fire. You earned this years ago." I should have given it then. Fireworks burst beyond the trees, their noise swallowed by silence. Later, I drove along the coast with the windows down. The night smelled of salt and smoke. The coin in my hand caught the glow of passing headlights. I didn't feel angry, only clean, like something inside had finally torn loose. Roland's truck pulled over behind me. He walked toward the water, sleeves rolled up, not the captain anymore, just a man. "You shouldn't have had to wait for me to speak," he said. "But you did," I answered. He handed me a folded mission report, Operation Revenant. My name was on it, blacked out under thick lines of ink. They classified everything, but we never forgot your call sign. He took a breath, eyes glassy. "I thought silence would protect you. I was wrong. It only protected my ego, and Zach's." I said, "Yeah, him too." Then he pulled another coin from his pocket, old and worn. "This one's from my team. We kept it for the day. We could thank you, right?" I held both coins in my hand, metal glowing gold in the moonlight. "We're good, Captain. Just don't stay silent again." He nodded toward the waves. No more silence. When I turned to leave, he said quietly, "Zach's not angry at you. He's angry at himself for not earning what you did. Then maybe it's time he learns how to earn something real." The wind shifted, cool and steady. I closed my fingers around both coins. Behind us, the tide rolled in and carried the night's last sound away. No more silence. 3 years after that night by the sea, I stood on the runway at Pensacola, sunlight flashing off rows of metals and brass. I had been summoned to receive the Navy Commendation for outstanding service in joint operations. New missions, new skies. This time, it wasn't secret. The hangar doors were open, cameras ready, the band steady. As I scanned the crowd, I froze. Roland was there, wearing his old SEAL uniform, ribbons faded, shoulders squared. He had never shown up at anyone's ceremony before. For a heartbeat, the air thickened like history, folding back on itself. When the applause faded, he walked toward me, holding a worn seal cap. "You make the uniform look better than any of us ever did," he said. I smiled through the lump in my throat. "Don't exaggerate, Captain." Then he straightened his back and saluted. The crowd stilled. A few SEAL veterans followed. Heads bowed. I returned the salute. No words were needed. This was the acknowledgement that had taken 10 years to arrive. After the ceremony, Roland handed me a faded photo. Him as a young officer beside a pilot whose face was washed out by sunlight. "Never got her name," he murmured. "Now I know why." That night, my phone buzzed. "Saw the video. You deserved it. Proud of you." Zach's message glowed on the screen. Short, honest, enough. The reflection on the metal blurred as my eyes filled. Not with pain, but peace. 2 generations. 1 salute. Finally, no silence left between us. A year later, summer came back softer. The Butler backyard no longer rang with bravado or loud laughter. Only the crackle of the old grill, the rustle of leaves, and children chasing each other through the grass. Zach had changed. He now worked with Veterans Outreach, helping soldiers return to civilian life. His voice carried something it never had before. Wait. When I walked in, the conversation paused. I wore a simple uniform, no medals, no ribbons, just fabric and service. Zach rose from his seat, smiling in a way that didn't try to impress anyone. "Everyone, meet Commander Butler, the pilot who brought my father home." Applause rippled through the table, warm and real. Roland stayed quiet, his eyes shining as he watched me. My mother leaned close and whispered, "Finally, people know who you are." "That's not why I came," I said. Then Evan, 6 now, full of energy and wonder, ran toward me and stopped, trying to stand straight the way soldiers do. "Dad says you flew through storms to save people." I knelt to his level. I just didn't leave them behind. The words broke something open. Roland's composure slipped, his shoulders shaking as tears traced down his cheeks. Zach put a trembling hand on my shoulder. "I should have known better," he said. "Now you do," I answered and smiled, not out of pride, but release. Later, when the sky turned gold, Roland found me by the porch. He held out the old seal coin, its edges worn smooth. "This belongs with you. Always did." I looked at Evan, his small fingers sticky from melted popsicle, eyes fixed on the glint of that coin. "Keep it," I told Roland. "Let him see it every day. Let him know what it means." Roland nodded, his hand closing around it before placing it gently in the boy's palm. The sunset hit the metal, and the light danced up into the trees. For a moment, everything, the laughter, the quiet, the history, felt whole again. Zach watched the light play over his son's hand, then looked at me. "Guess we both found what we were looking for." "Respect?" I asked. "Peace," he said. The last rays faded, leaving only the warmth of the evening and the soft murmur of family. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. 12 years had passed since that first summer when laughter cut deeper than silence. I returned to Jacksonville on leave, driving the same coastal road lined with pines and salt wind. The old Butler house still stood, its paint sun-faded, its porch now a gallery of lives lived well. There were photos of Roland in uniform, of Zach shaking hands with veterans, of Evan grinning beside his father. And there, tucked between them, hung a smaller frame, me in my flight suit, sunlight glinting off my helmet, beneath the handwritten words, "Revenant One, Family of the Brave." Inside, Evan, 18 now, tall, calm, and deliberate, was wiping the glass that held the seal coin. He turned toward me, the light catching his face. "Aunt Michelle, were you scared that night?" "Yes," I said. "But courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about flying anyway." He smiled, a mix of curiosity and pride. "Dad says bravery runs in the Butler blood. No, I told him, it runs in choice. The screen door creaked open behind us. Roland stepped out. Slower now. Cane in hand, but still carrying that quiet command. His voice was gravel and warmth. You made this family understand what service really means. I laughed softly. Took a few barbecues to do it. He chuckled, the sound fading into the hum of cicadas. Overhead, the sky broke open with the roar of jets, T-45s slicing through sunlight in perfect formation. The reflection off their wings flashed onto the coin in Evan's hand. And for a heartbeat, the whole porch glowed. I looked at the boy, then at the man who'd once been my commander, and whispered, the ones who matter already know. The rest, they'll catch up. The jets vanished into the blue. Roland leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed. Evan stood straight, the coin bright in his palm. Honor lived on, not in speeches or medals, but in the quiet understanding that after all the storms, the sky still belonged to us, 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 still belonged to us.